hopefully you can see we're doing some rebranding. Of course, Smart Charge America, we rebranded to, kind of a single logo and an abbreviation, just to make it just pop a little bit more simple. You can see the charging station behind us that we white label with a partner of ours. Okay. It's got our old logo on it. You can kind of see on the ground. It's like a 3-layered logo. It's got EV, it's got the power symbol, and it's got the American flag behind it. Yeah. And that's great and all, but we've had it for 17 years, and so we decided, let's get let's kind of refine things and get a little more simple. And that's what we're doing basically for every step of the process for our customers. Is we're hoping to just kind of redefine what we're doing and literally remove the friction, from the entire process out of the equation. So the more friction we can remove for our customer, commercial, residential service, the better, right? The more maybe they'll come back to us, or more maybe they'll tell their friends. And so I'm literally only wearing this hat for this interview just to promote the Smart Charge America. But in general, it's Texas Tuesday. So in the office, we always listen to country music on Tuesday and wear our cowboy boots and belt buckles and all that stuff. So
I love it, Texas Tuesday.
But that's it, man. That's us. So we're cool. We started in 2007. We're exclusively focused on EV charging installations, and so that's all that we do. But we do a number of other things inside the industry when it comes to residential services, commercial services, industrial fleet, preventative maintenance, you name it, we've done it, airports, all the way around. So I'd say the safest part about us is that we've not really tangled too much with the government over the past 4 years, and so we were not really subject to any of the NEVI or the federal funds, and projects, being, underwritten across that. And all of a sudden the funding, just completely gets pulled from us. So that is like a blessing in disguise. So as it may be, fire away, man. Any way that I can help you guys, kind of discover a little bit more about EV charging, and, kind of what particular you guys are looking into. I'm all ears. I can try to help steer you in the right direction, or just kind of tell you what we know in the industry, from being in it so long. But yeah, fire away, man. Let's see what you have. But if you can, my name is Joseph Barletta. I'm the founder and CEO. I know we already, kind of made introductions, but tell me a little bit about yourself and what you're doing and what you're hoping to get out of it.
Yeah. Great way to start. A little intro about me. Recent graduate from the University of Arkansas with a degree in supply chain and entrepreneurship.
Here we go.
Suey, come on, Woo Pig.
That's it.
And now I work for a venture studio. We create tech software, B2B SaaS businesses for the retail space, for the entire retail value chain. Entered that role here in January, and am now outside of work involved in the Flip Space Advanced Mobility Arkansas program through the U of A, University of Arkansas. And it's through that program where I'm working alongside some other researchers, a doctoral candidate, and a few professors there that were trying to figure out how to utilize federal IP that we're given access to through this program, specifically in the EV charging space. And we're trying to figure out what in the world to do with it. The University of Arkansas has all this federal IP that they have access to, but like many other universities, they're not doing anything with it. So this program is kind of finding a way to advance transportation industry, specifically through technology, utilizing that federal IP as kind of the backbone, the infrastructure of those businesses. So we're really on just step one. We're just trying to dive into the industry, hear from professionals like yourself, but as well as just consumers, people that are driving EV cars, and just trying to understand where the gaps are in the industry, where the white space is, where the opportunities are for new businesses, new technologies, new solutions. And so, yeah, that's kind of the introduction to this call. How we got connected to you is we would love to hear from you. We just want to learn.
Gotcha. Well, I am a consumer on that end. I mean, I've been driving EVs since 2013 and been a full EV home since 2016.
Wow.
And so, so 9 years. But, there are a lot of us out there. I mean, mainly, you'll have consumers that'll have, one EV and then one gas car, and it's fine. The problem is that what they've told us and what we found out is that they typically love their EV so much, they stop driving their gas car. And then all of a sudden you got the you forgot to put the trickle charger on the gas car, and forgot to change the oil, and you got to keep those things running, right? You got to keep them running at all times, and they neglect the maintenance on it, and then they just end up selling it and kind of going all EV once they understand the patterns and the charging behaviors and all that stuff that's combined with it. So I mean, I can try my best to give you kind of perspective from both angles, from a consumer based angle as well as a business angle. So anywhere I can help, fire away.
Can you start by just giving me a little bit of a history lesson from Mr. Joseph? What got you into the EV space? You said you guys started back in 2007.
So
inspiration behind there.
Well, in June of 2007, I was one of those fans that basically waited in line at the Apple store and literally, for hours, to get my first iPhone. And remember, they would only sell you one iPhone. You couldn't buy like a bunch. They would only sell you one. So I was like, all right, I'll get one. And I was a huge fan of Apple at the time, but I recall, I had a Palm Pilot. That's what I went from a Palm Pilot to an Apple phone, and an iPhone. Basically, the backlight in the iPhone. Remember, it was like, why is it draining my battery so much? I don't know if you were old enough to remember that, but that was a big thing because we used to go for like the Nokia phone, and then you had the Palm Pilot, which was it drained battery a little bit, but then the iPhone. When it was, it would, the backlight would just drain. This is before the automatic adjusting setting, software updates over, And so I recall that, before there was a solution and before, Apple released Notes and everyone got really familiar with it, it was just a new technology. And so we were like, okay, well, we just have to charge the phone more often. And so I remember, having to, have a charger cable in the kitchen, in my bedroom, in the car, in the office. Everywhere I went, I had this cable, and I was almost tethered to the cable as much because the battery would drain so much, and I was pretty dependent on my phone. And I also kind of took a look at some of the stuff that's going on in Silicon Valley. I'm a huge hot rod fan, but I also am like kind of a tech geek, so I love kind of being in kind of on the latest and greatest when it comes to technology. And so started hearing about this, these things in California, Silicon Valley, AC propulsion, EVs, and kind of that mindset. And then, essentially I kind of, a light bulb clicked, and it was like, hey man, I'm pretty dependent on my phone, and I'm constantly charging. So I'm like really dependent on this charger, this cable. And so I said, well, what else am I dependent on? I love hot rods. I love cars. We're pretty dependent on our vehicles, those who of us who who use them every single day, but we become overwhelmingly reliant on our vehicles. And so that too, if the electric vehicle thing kind of takes off, needs that component, needs that charging. And I just remember always wanting to do something that no one could fire me for, like no one could use me and then toss me to the side. Like I don't always have a dependency for, like people would always need me, right? I wanted to create something that one, I could give back to, consumers and just kind of help them through this like really hard, difficult technology and break it down in layman's terms and be like, no, it's not that hard. It's actually really easy. Let me break it down to you. But also just to help guide them through that charging process. But to me, it was more, I just wanted to create something that, I could never kind of get fired from. I used to work compliance at hospitals, and I would go into the hospitals and I would make sure they're all compliant, all their records assigned, and all the doctor's orders. And then I would set them up a systems of checks and balances to make sure it never happens again. And then everything's working and everything's smooth and everything's, ready and compliant, and it's compliant. And then they don't need me anymore. So then they fire me. And then I go to the next hospital and I do this over and over again. I'm like, I have to be able to create something that is more of a reliant, more of a structured approach to my sanity as well as my future when it comes to like what I want to do with my career. So that's where it kind of hit me. Put two and two together, this electric vehicle thing, really starts to grow. I can be on the forefront. I could be, a part of that front wave of it. And it just so happens that we've been riding the wave, however slow it has been. We've been riding it for, 18 years now. So it's definitely been fun. Wouldn't trade it in for the world. So
that's awesome. That's really cool. I'm curious, what did the company look like in 2007 versus now? Like, how is it?
It was just me. It was me and a laptop in my bedroom, no money. Basically, I bootstrapped it from I think I had like a $2,000 credit with Home Depot, a credit card with Home Depot, and then of course a couple $100 in the bank account, and that was it. And so now we're $20 million company. We're operating in 50 states across the U.S. and I got some really good high quality team members that will continue to help push us to where we can try to serve as many customers out there as possible. So, but yeah, it was just in the beginning, it was just me and a laptop. And what I did was I was an EV charging guy first. And so what I had to do is I had to get partner with a master electrician, and I had to follow him around for the better scope of about maybe 4 or 5 years, figure out, as I had customers come in, we would go to the house together, we would kind of map out everything, and he'd tell me, okay, it's going to be about $450 for my fee for doing everything. And I turn around and sell the customer for, $600 or whatever, $650. I didn't need to make a lot. It was just me, right? Just needed to make enough to pay my cell phone bill, or pay my car note or something. Sure. And eventually it started snowballing to the point where I was using my contractor's resources, my master electrician's resources up so much that it was like, he started like, hey man, I can't do this, anymore. You're going to have to hire your own electrician. And I'm like, I don't even know what that's like. There's no way. Cause I'm not an electrician. I'm an EV charging guy. Right. So I built the company from the ground up as an EV charging installation company. I had to learn how to become an electrical contractor. I wasn't an electrical contractor. Just kind of started doing this on the side as an arm when things got real popular. So all of our systems, everything from within is all routed and geared towards all things EV charging related. And so that was, I'm grateful for that, because I don't have two different distinct systems and softwares and, failed languages and, departments not speaking to one another. We basically and so that allows us to really operate a lot more efficient than maybe other companies in the space. So I hope that answers the question.
And are you all based there out of Austin, or you guys are pretty?
Yeah. We're headquartered out of Austin, and we have in-network satellite offices all over the nation. But we also have out-of-network partners that we've partnered with when, we have to do an installation in, Missoula, Montana, and we don't have an office there, but we have a great relationship with the contractor over there. So we'll be able to get those jobs done. So in that case, we kind of manage, I would say, about 240 plus electrical contractors, out there. But in our in-network, it's about 78 contractors total as of today. And then, of course, we do all self-performing stuff in Texas. So,
okay. And can you give me just a quick understanding what the industry looks like? Who else is out there that's like Smart Charge America? What makes you guys different?
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot of electrical contractors, large, medium-based electrical contractors that basically just started doing this on the side, like we talked about before. They opened up an arm. They want to specialize in it. They have a lot higher credit limits and balances, and they're pulling in hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And so they're able to buy, kind of in bulk and get maybe better pricing pressures. But, they too have to adapt to what we've been doing all this time and how we continue. So we have to continuously adapt, and they too also have to adapt. But I would say one of the things that really sets us apart is our unique ability to kind of bundle a lot of different services that we have, customizable to exactly what the customer wants. Whereas some of the larger firms, they're not really able to bend or adapt as fast as we are, being that, we're a smaller firm. We're a little bit more agile in that working space. So, I would say just having the system exclusively focused on all things EV charging. If your charger is down, if you can't charge, you can't drive. And so that's pretty important to us. And we know that's really important to our customers. So other electrical contracting firms, they may not have that a part of their ethos when it comes to urgency and priority as we do, because that's kind of our focus, right? And so, you have the other electrical contractors, they may be out and doing, commercial work and building skyscrapers and, stadiums and hospitals and stuff. And so when things ramp up and get really, really busy for them, they may not be able to prioritize their customers accordingly. Based on opportunity costs and stuff like that. And so for us, it's always in the forefront, for our customers. So I think a lot with that, we're able to really I guess, kind of be on a couple of people's radar. Ford, just looked us up, and we have an RFP out with them. We have a couple city contracts, municipality contracts, airport contracts. And so I think more and more people are finding out about Smart Charge America and what we're doing in the industry to really, stabilize that focus, especially now that, kind of uptime is the main thing around these EV chargers. And so people want, no, I need a dedicated company that's exclusively focused on EV charging. If this is a problem and I need to solve it, I need to get real serious in this. I need to get I need it all in. I need to go all in on this, right? I don't need to just dip my toes in the water. I need somebody who's all in on this that can help me with what we need. So hope that works.
Yeah, absolutely. What were, before you had built your brand to be kind of known as this type of player in the market, what were some of the big challenges in scaling your business to get where you are today?
Honestly, it's how customers and consumers see us. It's because you're getting consumers, let's say if you're kind of wondering about purchasing an EV, you're almost in a small window where you're kind of actively doing research, you're kind of doing your stuff. But then when you actually go to the dealership and you're talking and you're negotiating, there's a small window of opportunity where once you purchase that EV, you need to get a charging station installed. And so we got, maybe, a week, maybe, 2 days. For us, it's 27 minutes. That's how we look at things. So the moment you contact us, we have to guide you through our system, analyze the photos, do the measurements, send you the estimate, get approval, all within 27 minutes. That's how fast we used to do things, back in the day. And so before you're on our schedule, and then we're out to, install for you, the next day or two. Of course, we're having a lot more volume now, but I always challenge my guys, 27 minutes. If you can get a deal, if a customer calls us or fills out the form and you can get their estimate back to them and locked in and put on the calendar in 27 minutes, we'll give you $100 cash. It's kind of a thing in the office, but not a lot of people are able to really, work that fast. So I still have the $100 cash bill, kind of at the top of our sales office. Cool. But in general, it's that customer has a small window. And then when you're looking at a business that's looking to get EV charging put in, they're calling their main electrical contractor that they've been working with for a while, or they're doing a quick search online, and the big boys are pulling up, right? The people who have hundreds of thousands of dollars that are just pouring money into search engine optimization and Google paid clicks and all that stuff. Smart Charge America has never marketed a day in its life. We feel that we need to be able to take our profits and just continue to inject into our system and make it better. And so we're happy with the customer, intake that we have currently. Tesla's been a really big focus and a big pusher for Smart Charge America and our services. They've, I've been part of their network for, close to since 2012. And, the more and more OEMs that find us and they want to do business with us, it does bring in a lot more business. But I would say the difference is, the commercial sales cycle is a lot longer. It's, these, procurement process, everything takes just 3, 4, 6 months. Consumer, timeline is very short, very small window. And then of course you have your servicing, where if somebody currently has EV chargers and something goes wrong, well, they need it now, so now that window is really short, and they'll typically call an electrical contractor that, that can come out there and diagnose the electrical portion of it. But there's 5, kind of aptitudes of servicing an EV charger. It's the electrical, it's the hardware inside the station, it's the software that the station has, it's user error, and sometimes, most importantly, it's vandalism, which you can see in the, kind of news these days. It's all vandalism that's on the forefront. But I think more and more, as these EV chargers are getting a little bit better to understand and maybe easier to operate, I think the user error is kind of going down a little bit. But significantly, I would say 78% of the time there's an error. It's because of the network communications side of things, the software side. It's not communicating, or the payment, credit card, swipe transaction, thing isn't, working with the internal of the charging station. Something's bugged out because somebody did a software update and the other ones didn't communicate that software update, and they didn't do it together. And so those are some of the things that we're finding out in the industry that are kind of causing some headaches. But I would say the difference between the customer base is that it's just kind of how long is your sales cycle for each growing, I guess, channel or market that you're getting into. So
yeah. I want to rewind to that. You were talking about current landscape just for EV charging in the US. You talked about just some of the trends, some of the issues that you're seeing. Could you talk more in depth about just those current events, what you're seeing going on in the EV charging landscape.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Tesla, Tesla is the big gorilla in the room, right? And we always kind of compare things with Tesla, and right now Tesla, they have, if you look at their uptime across the network with their supercharging, stalls, I think maybe they're somewhere. I know they're somewhere approaching like 70,000 worldwide. You could put, half of that maybe in the United States. Maybe they're somewhere around 30,000 stalls, that are available in the United States with a 99% uptime. And so like that's the cream of the crop. Now, Tesla's advantage is that they're completely vertically integrated. So they manufacture all their hardware, they have their software stack, all the power electronics, everything that's there. They subcontract, us out and other electrical contractors to do the actual, installation work. And then of course the servicing and all that stuff is done internally for them. So it's a lot more vertically stacked, integration. And of course they're selling the car. So now they know where the cars are and they have all that information and data that they pull together, and that just makes this huge ecosystem just operate the way that it needs to be because they're all in. Tesla's all in on EVs. And you have these other networks that, they're not a manufacturer of EVs, and so they're a charge point operator. And so as of that, they're using different OEMs and different charging, OEMs to put in their fleet, and those OEMs have different parts, supply chain woes, and everything else like that. So when it comes to the charging landscape, there was a big problem, I would say maybe 5 years ago, where just like 60% of the time you go to a non-Tesla public charging station, it's just not going to work, and that's mainly, level 3 DC fast charging stations. And so over time, 2 years ago, there was an article that has gone, up to 67% uptime, which is great. We're making improvements. And of course, just recently, there was a consumer report stating that, we're back to like 1 in 5. So we're uptime is around 80%. So we're slowly catching up to that mix, and trying to keep up with the gorilla in the room, which is Tesla, because they are that high standard. And we should, as a public, network of EV charging drivers and operators, we should strive to hit that very high bar. But and that's what we've seen over the past few years is that we've struggled. We've really struggled, in the 60s and 70s. Now we're in the 80s. It's only a matter of time before we get better service plans. These charging operators get things going, and everyone kind of fully understands the mission at hand and the importance of keeping these charging stations up and running at all times, because people start to grow reliant on them. They start to grow dependent on them. And when it comes to charging operators, the more utilization that these charging stations have for the operator, the more revenue they're able to generate, more profits coming into them, more they're able to service or kind of retain for servicing needs and that sort of thing. And they're not just stranded assets not being used, like you hear some of the horror stories on public EV charging infrastructure. So, unfortunately, when it comes to your question, you have to break the industry up in two and then set the bar on here and then figure out where everyone else is over here.
Gotcha.
Because of the impact that Tesla's had on the EV charging space and the EV space in general. So,
wow, yeah, you mentioned this metric uptime.
Yes.
What is that? What's driving that? What are the factors playing?
Okay, so uptime is basically as a charge point operator. Let's say Electrify America, EVgo, Tesla. These are charge point operators. These are companies that said, hey, you know what? I'm going to be the gas station. I'm going to be the Shell or the Exxon, and I'm going to buy my gasoline pumps or my EV charging stations, and I'm going to sign host agreements with companies, and I'm going to put my charging stations in the ground, and I'm going to charge people to come and use my chargers. I want to be, the premier Exxon or the gas station, company out there. I'm using gas stations, just in layman's terms, but what uptime is the measurement of, if you have 1,000 charging stations in your portfolio as a charge point operator, and you have a 90% uptime, that just means that at any given time throughout your portfolio, you're averaging 10% or 100 of those stations are inoperable. And so you want to have a high uptime, because it's basically how dependable are all of your charging stations across all of your network, your network portfolio. And there's different ways of calculating that metric. Some companies will calculate it one way, some others, but in general, that's essentially it. So if you have 1,000 chargers all across the US, and you have a 99% uptime, that's a really good metric to be there by. And, Tesla does, they are able to accomplish that because their power electronics and their integrated stack is just far more superior than other players out in the industry. But as more and more of these OEMs start to become fully integrated in their offerings themselves, because they're understanding like, hey, we're doing everything we can do here, but our credit card processor that we outsource isn't working. Like these guys they're not communicating, whatever. Then some of the OEMs are like, you know what, we're going to develop our own in-house credit card processing machine, and we're gonna include that in with our vertical stack. So it just depends on the nature of the OEM that's actually coming to the marketplace with their products and how they feel they want to make an impact in the industry and kind of carve out a market segment on their behalf. So sure. I hope that answers that question. So
yeah, to clarify a little bit more, could you talk about, I guess, the difference between charging at an EV charging spot at an EV charging station versus just fueling up your normal gas tank at a gas station? Like there, I would expect uptime to probably be a lot higher, right? Like each time I go to a gas station, I can maybe expect for one or two different pumps, I guess, being inoperable.
Maybe, and you've seen the yellow bags, and you're like, oh,
yellow
man,
bags on
crap.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah. Sometimes when there's a hurricane or a natural disaster or something, you'll start going around, you'll see a dozen of these gas stations, all of them. So everyone's like kind of rushing to look out and see which ones have the yellow thing on them. You're like, oh, they don't, let's go over there. Supply and demand, what do you do? But I would say, what it looks like is you have to kind of keep in the mindset of two things. One is your top off model and one is your depot model. So the refueling method that all Americans, with gas cars use is the depot model. You have to physically go to Costco or Walmart or Exxon or Valero or Shell, and you have to physically go to their location and you have to fill up, right? Maybe a little bit inconvenience, but there's so many all over the place that you generally are able to do it kind of when you're en route. You just have to kind of break that, that route, refuel, kind of go back, right? And so that charging session, or I guess you could say that refueling session when it comes to gasoline cars, generally takes, by the time you get out, swipe your card, do that, sit in your car, wait for it. Maybe you're going inside to use the restroom, and that's how they make money off of the alcohol, the tobacco, the junk food, and everything else at the depots. It's more like this luring temptation to just get you to come in. In general, that whole thing, let's say checking your email while it's doing, topping off, checking your tire pressure, maybe cleaning your windows. Maybe let's say that takes about 5 to 7 minutes, and then you're off. When you're in a rush, you can do it in like 2.5, 3. And that's like a challenge. Like you're like, bring it, let's go, challenge accepted. I can do this in 3 minutes. Let's go. Do I really need to fill it up? No, I can do halfway. Let's go, get out of here. You're playing that game. Exactly. And it's fun. It's great. But again, that's the depot model. You have to go to those chargers and those charging facilities. And so you're kind of, lo and behold, dependent on them. Whereas with electric vehicles, I would say, back in the day, maybe, over the past 15 years, the top off model was the most widely used sought off model. And it currently still is today, but you'll have some OEM, companies that are trying to come in and they're trying to kind of recreate that depot model, but just in the essence of, EV chargers and no gas stations. And then you have kind of like your flex or hybrid models, like a Buc-ee's gas station that'll have 250 pumps. Yeah. But then over here on the side, they have, 40 Tesla superchargers, so that's kind of like a hybrid thing. Mm-hmm. So you're getting people, they're already stopping. Buc-ee's is such a huge location. It's such an attractive building and such an attractive venue and a thing to do. It's a part of the Texas culture that it's a no-brainer to line up, 40, 100 Tesla superchargers at a Buc-ee's. You're going to get your money's worth out of it. But I guess the whole use case behind it is the charging time. So, or you look at the refueling time. So part of the depot model with gasoline cars, you mentioned 22 minutes, 5 minutes, right? With charging, the newer EVs, as you're lily padding from supercharger to supercharger or charging spot to charging spot, your ability to go from very low state of charge on your battery, let's say 10% to 80%, generally happens in about 15 to 20 minutes. So if you were doing the regular depot model with a gas car and you were going in, you start your pump and you go in to Buc-ee's, you grab a cup of coffee, you use the restroom, buy some snacks, wait in line, maybe get a souvenir, whatever. You come back, it's been 25 minutes, easy. Sometimes it's an hour, but we don't want to admit it because, we want to, stay true to ourselves. But most of the time, let's say it's 25, 30 minutes. So, in that case, if you just did the supercharger or if you pumped fuel in your gas, it doesn't matter. Your stay at that facility because of the attraction and all that stuff was, let's say, an average 30 minutes. So great. Now those parallel and there's really no lost time. But in the event that, let's say, you're going to a supercharger and it takes you from 10% to 80%, 20 minutes. Well, by the time you maybe go get a cup of coffee, use the restroom, come back. All right, it's 5 minutes. Jump on your email, catch up on your email, maybe catch up on some social media. I don't know what to tell you. And then just boom, you're off to your next spot. And so generally speaking, it's a metric between like 5 minutes and 25-minute difference in the depot model. Now, most people don't understand that you don't really need to take your supercharger session, from 80 to 20%. You don't need to go from 10 to 100%. You could easily do from 10 to 80, move on to your next location, and then do the same, move on to your next. If you sit at that charger for another 40 minutes, that's how long it's going to take you to go from 80% to 100%. So that last 20% is going to take you 40 minutes. So it almost triples the time. And so not a lot of people, most people are starting to kind of get, be aware of that. But most of the high mileage drivers that, Ubers and, they made all these agreements with, Hertz and, Tesla. And you have a lot of these guys, like they need every single inch and every single percentage of their battery because an extra percentage is an extra ride that they would able to generate revenue off of. And so they're literally sitting at those charging stations for an hour getting, filled. And so in those cases, it's a huge inconvenience because I could have been in and out recharging my car, in an hour as opposed to refueling it in 5 minutes. And so we've seen that trend happening in the marketplace. But as far as the top off model and the depot model, the results are the top off model is just a lot more convenient. It hits you where you're at. So when you're going to the movies or when you're going to the, grocery store or you're going to work or you're going to, your apartment complex or visit a friend or, going to the gym or church or golf, golfing at a golf resort, like the chargers are there. And so you're already going there. And so it's just more convenient. Just pull up and charge, right? And the act of actually walking in the back and plugging it in takes, 5 seconds. So in theory, you're going about doing your stuff. And so now you're going from 5 minutes to 5 seconds. Now, what's the whole, argument with that? It's not really that much. But if generally speaking, you could put an EV charger anywhere that has power and electricity is everywhere. It's all over the place, right? But you can't necessarily put a gas station everywhere. You have to have EPA rights and permits and, all this stuff. You have to be, of that community to be able to put those fueling stations into place. So the abundancy of being able to just slather, a city with all sorts of places with EV charging, it just becomes that much more abundant for people to be able to utilize. And it's on their way. It's where they're at instead of them being inconvenienced to have to, follow the depot model and go, kind of out of their route and then charge, or refuel and then back there. So most of the time you'll find that the convenience, especially when you're traveling, to have EV charging at hotels is really cool, right? So if you're running low, it's going to take you 2.5, 3 hours to charge on a level 2 240 volt, charger. Great. I'm already done my driving for the day. I reach my hotel destination. I just plug in, go get something to eat maybe, and now my car is charging overnight. I'm already staying overnight, so it's not really affecting me anything. And then I know that when I get up in the morning and unplug, I'm fully charged. I can just continue going, about my way. So there's a little bit more planning and logistics that have to happen if you really want it to be smooth. And I would say the Tesla drivers have the advantage of the supercharger network and just the technology that Tesla has built inside their software and their dashboard for drivers through their app and through their online screen on their vehicles, that they are at a significant advantage to those who don't have the Tesla supercharging network. But of course, those companies are getting better at their software. They're getting better at their user interfaces. And a lot of their telematics that are on the back end and their mapping systems. And they're also partnering with Tesla to, kind of use Tesla's charging network, because 99% uptime and reliability, maybe with the use of adapters. And then you could see now the whole industry is coming together and getting a single port, basically standardization. So if you look at the biggest example I could say is where the phones were, 5 years ago, when you had the Apple Lightning phone charger, you had the USB micro, you had USB as a charger, and then Android, had their own, and then the USB-C came out, and then everyone started leaning towards the USB-C, and now Apple started leaning towards the USB-C, and now everyone's just kind of using USB-C. Now, if we are in a world maybe 10 years from now where all phones have one single charging port standard, which is the USB-C, it's like, yes, I can, we're free, that's happening to the electric vehicle industry right now. So you had, about 4 ports that were kind of the industry standard. And then you had Tesla, and now you have everything kind of molding to the Tesla standard in the industry. And so as of, 2025, a lot of manufacturers are starting to build their EV and like their EVs with the Tesla charging port on the back, so that way they're compatible with the Tesla charging standard, which they call the North American Charging Standard, which is short for NACS. So if you hear me talk about NACS, it's basically just the Tesla connector, or the USB-C connector, as opposed to the USB micro or whatever. I'm not that good at the charging connectors, the names on phones, but.
Gotcha. Can you talk a little bit more about trends, maybe technologies that you're most excited about personally, that you feel like could really disrupt the EV charging space? I don't know. I don't like.
Okay.
You're following along with what's going on in China with their research is getting them to 5-minute charging time to get from 0 to 100, right?
Yeah. I mean, you could do that. And we researched the industry pretty well. I mean, the reason why we were called Smart Charge America is because I had to study the Chinese market, because there was no American market. So I had to study the Chinese and figure out what they were doing, figure out where they were making mistakes, and bring that to America so we don't make the mistakes, right? And then it just wasn't really catching that much. And so the only cross comparison that I had with China was Europe. So I had to really study and understand the European market and their grid and their distribution, what they're doing and how they're cross comparing with China, as China is more government subsidy based, and they're able to really throw their weight at a problem. You can see China is able to solve, they were the first to make the errors and the mistakes, but they were the first to solve them. But whether or not Europe was moving fast enough to be able to see that and put in implementation measures for their own, there was a little bit of a lag until they got, punched in the face, and then you start doing things right. And you're like, oh, why didn't we do that, to start with? Well, it's sometimes when you're dealing with different countries all over the place like Europe, it's just more difficult. You got roaming charges, you got, currency fees and exchange rates and roaming, all that stuff. So when it comes to those two markets, I studied those two markets very heavily. And then when the U.S. market started ramping up, I knew, it was like, okay, we got to start doing these things very smart. When it comes to EV charging infrastructure, let's look at scalability. Let's look at future proofing. Let's look at these things that will help take the pains out of our customers, future, projections. Because if they build it, they'll come. But if you only build 2 and they all come, well, what happens when you need to expand to 8? Well, when you were building 2 and you started digging things out of the ground, why didn't you just put a couple extra conduits, or a couple, larger size conduits? That way you can sleeve the old cable in and put new wire in. You don't have to reconstruct this whole process all over again, because 90% of the charging cost is just construction. And if I can save you 90% the next time you come back to me, why not? If the size of conduit from a 1-inch conduit to 2-inch conduit is, it costs you a total of $90. For the whole project, why not make that advancement? Because as technology grows, as more and more people come and use your stuff, planned obsolescence with charging, with anything, you're gonna have to replace these units in the next 8, 9 years, maybe 10. And so let's try to, extend the life of these assets while we're in the ground. But when they are up, we have to have a plan of action of what we're doing there. So, kind of getting back to your, I guess your question on the trends. There's 2 big trends that are happening. One, both of them has to do with taking friction out of the process for the consumer. So when you have a Tesla and you pull up to a Tesla supercharger, there is no authentication process. You just back into the charger, you grab the cord and you plug it in and you walk away, and it just works. You don't have to worry about swiping your card. You don't have to worry about getting on an app. You don't have to worry about saying, hey, this is me, approve, authorize, yes, charge my card. NFC technology, Apple Pay, all that, it's gone. Paying on the screen, paying with a couple of dollars in a vending machine. I don't know. And none of that exists. So Tesla really focused on removing all of the friction. Like, basically, what's the best part? No part. There's no friction in the process. Well, when it comes to everyone else, we're all tripping on our toes. Everyone's trying to gain market share. Everyone's trying to, produce the best product out there as possible, but no one's really kind of thinking of the greater good, the bigger picture. And one of the things that has come into light, and now the cars are being built with the technology, and the chargers are now being built with the technology. So now when the customer plugs in, they can experience the same thing that of what Tesla has figured out 12 years ago, is the plug and charge standard. So it's ISO 15118. And so what that does is that allows the customer, they have their EV, they sign up on, with their EV account, they put their credit card in and all that stuff. And then they have an account with the charging manufacturer. They put their card in and say, hey, this, my vehicle's, registration number is Delta 22, and so then you put Delta 22 in there. No problem. We understand that's the language. Everything's connected to your credit card account. So whenever you pull up to that charger, you just plug in and you walk away, and it just works. There's no credit card swipe or authentication, anything like that, So that's that is just going to really make EVs just explode in popularity because of that, just removing all the friction. And so Tesla's already figured out. It's just like the rest of the world has to figure that out. The rest of the US, the rest of the universal EVs, what we call, has to figure that out. And so that standard is just starting to kind of come to grips. But man, we are 15 years behind. That technology should have hit, 10 years ago when Europe was using it. But of course, America, we're just too slow to move. So really excited about that. But honestly, one of the things I'm most excited about is the advanced technologies that we are seeing in the marketplace when it comes to wireless charging. So we already knew this 10 years ago. Smart Charge America will absolutely 1000% be on the forefronts of all things wireless charging technology and putting these systems into the ground for commercial, residential, anyone and everyone, because we understand that's ultimately where the industry is going to move. These woes with tethered or untethered cables, cable management systems, and cables being dragged across and cut, from, for copper and vandalism and all that stuff, again, what's the best part? No part. So just removing the wires altogether from the experience. Most of the time, half the time when people with EVs have a problem with their charger, it's because they didn't charge the night before when they really needed to, because they had their kids, they had groceries, they got distracted. And so all of a sudden they're so used to having a full charge in the morning, they come out and they're like, oh, I forgot to charge. Are you kidding me? Right. Whereas if they just have a wireless charging pad that they just drive over in the same parking spot, same parking, position, with the parking parameters that are set up that they always use day in and day out, they never have to worry about charging ever again or forgetting to charge. The car will just know, okay, there it is. We're going to charge for a little bit and get you back up to full. So, and then of course, there's the bi-directional charging that's really popular, with the advancements of like the power share system with the Tesla Cybertruck. We've been doing that with Tesla over the past 18 months now. So it's really been exciting to see the course of that technology move through and how it's able to be there as an emergency response and back up, people's homes with power in the time of need, hurricanes and, natural disasters. Just plug your truck in and boom, it works, So that's been huge, but I'd say between the plug-in charge standard, I'd say bi-directional as well, vehicle to home mainly, and wireless charging. That we're super thrilled and excited for wireless charging. Couldn't say more about it. Yeah.
Well, what role do you see, software playing in EV charging in the future?
It's huge, but the software is only as good as the software in the vehicles. That's the limitation. If you have charging software and you're the best charging software out there with the best hardware, the vehicles themselves have to also match and be able to speak that same software language, or it's just not going to be a really good experience. And so the OEMs that have vertically integrated their stack, like the likes of Tesla and maybe some of the other OEMs that, maybe I would say like Rivian with their Adventure Network, they can do a lot more things when you're vertically integrated and you have that software playing a pivotal role in the ability to receive, have the vehicle receive over the air updates. So you send an over the air update to the charger and bam, you send it to all of your fleets that have your software. And then all of a sudden now they can talk and everything is. So as you're making those software updates and those changes and different, software versions, everyone is moving up at the same time, as opposed to one company just doing all these software updates, getting better for their users. But then another company is just slow to move and it's not helping the whole industry rise the way that it needs to.
Interesting.
So,
yeah. That's a cool picture. Thank you for that. Are there any, I guess, emerging technologies that you're excited about? Any software related technologies that you're excited about?
AI and trying to figure out how we can inject AI into the things that we're doing. So that's one of the main focuses behind like kind of the rebranding and removing a lot of the friction out of our processes, is literally looking at how can we use AI to give us the information faster and to almost help the homeowner receive a quote instantly. So one of the things we've been toying with is right now, if you go to our website and let's say you buy an EV and you have a home and you go to our website and we're, fill out our form, very simple, takes you 30 seconds, very intuitive.
Yeah.
First, you're going to give us your contact information. Next, you're going to tell us about your EV. Next, you're going to tell us a little bit about your home. Great. Fourth and foremost, you're going to start taking pictures of your garage and of your electric panel and, of where you want to put your charger. And you're kind of giving us a visual framework of which to work in. And then what we do is we take that information, use Google satellite imagery and look at your home, kind of in a 360-degree view of things. And then we're stitching the photos that you've given us to kind of compose a 99% accurate scope of work. So we can accurately estimate and tell you exactly what it is, and the cost for your charging installation. We take into account parking parameters, where you park the car, how you park the car, front load, back load, and all of those good things. If the kids move in and you got to fill up the garage with furniture, hey, let's pull the charger maybe closer to the garage doors. That way, in case you need to park in the driveway, you can easily sleeve your cable underneath and do that, right? A multitude of different things, because once we put this charger there, it's permanently there. We can't move it. So we kind of look at what's the best position that will hit the more parking parameters or the more parking positions that you can do. This charging station will be able to, capture all of those. Maybe 6 out of 8 parking positions we're able to capture by placing it here. So let's give thought, process on that. But I would say for the for that process, one of the things we're working with is when the customer takes a picture of their electric panel, well, AI should be able to take that picture and do a load calculation and tell me exactly how much power and capacity I have on that panel before, to use in order to, install the actual charger. One of the main purposes and the most important thing is, as an electrical contractor, any commercial, industrial, residential, it doesn't matter. If we're going in and installing an EV charger, there's 2 things that we look for inside the panels that we're attaching our, we're putting our circuit, breaker in and we're running our electric line to the charger. It's space and capacity. And so if I have the customer submitting a photo of their stuff and along with everything else, and AI immediately picks up on that photo and identifies the breaker spaces and can tell me, hey, this is approved space and approved capacity, they're good to go. It can literally rewrite the code at which we're estimating for the customer. And then it can also maybe take a visual of the customer's, maybe bird's eye view of the home and, kind of maybe some of the pictures that Google Maps has had and put together a 3D rendering to where the customer is taking pictures. It matches and makes those pictures identify where the placement is on that panel in that house and then where the garage is. And it'll automatically calculate the linear distance of that run like an electrical contractor would have done already, and just spit out the price for the customer right then and there. Then customer just goes to our website, does all the stuff. They get a price, they can schedule their date and time, and they can pay, and we just show up. Now you want to talk about removing friction.
Yeah.
If anything remotely, landscaping, plumbing, electrical, any trade was that easy, it's game over. And so those are the things that we're really looking forward to, investing in and getting there. And we're pretty close. We're pretty close to some of the things that we're working on right now. And we do have an express charge option where you're coming in and you're giving us, your home. You want to put in an EV charger. You just bought an EV. You go to our form. You fill out the form. Depending on the things that you select, when you submit your photos, you may be enrolled in our express option, which basically gives a bird's eye view of your garage. Because you're telling us whether or not you have a single, a double, or a 3-car garage or a 4-car garage. And then it's asking you, hey, where's your electric panel in this garage? And you point, click. And then it says, okay, where do you want your charger? And you point and click from that bird's eye view. It does the calculation already right there for you. It gives you a price. You can pay for it right then and there, select the date and time. And that's it. We show up and we get it done. So we are already working on that, but it does require a little bit of the additional user input after they've gone through our system. And they don't mind it because they're like, oh, this is so easy. Just point here, click here, and bam, it's there. But I want to do it even easier. I don't want to have them click at all. I just want them to submit their information. Boom. AI does all the work for them. So we're really, excited about the potential and what AI is able to do and take all of our data from the past 18 years, bundle it, and any question that any customer has, we're able to really fundamentally go down into our archives and how did we answer this same question amongst 6,000 customers? Well, this is the way that this customer has this, and it answers the customer's needs and takes care of the customer right then and there and gives them exactly what they need to know, maybe without even getting us on the phone. So there's a lot of stuff that's truly exciting on what we're looking at AI being able to do. But of course, we just started scratching the surface when it comes to AI. So who knows?
Sure. Yep. Sure. And that's really cool. I mean, right now I'm shopping for car insurance, right? And I can get quotes from like 5 different car insurers within a matter of minutes, right? Because it's just, like you said, it's all plug and play. You're just answering questions left and right. What I am curious about is what, the question is leaving me.
We have a Allstate agreement with Allstate actually, but if you buy an EV and you have Allstate as your insurance company, Allstate will push Smart Charge America to you, and we give you 10% off of your charging installation services as a result of coming through and going through Allstate. So actually a really cool program. But you said you were looking at it, and so depending on who you go with, you may have a little adder there and be like, I know this company. I've seen these guys. Yeah. So it's pretty cool stuff Allstate's doing. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks for the plug. Yeah. I'm curious, you kind of branded yourself at the start of this talk as one of the smaller players in the industry. What are some of the bigger players in this industry? How are they going about getting quotes and estimates for consumers that are wanting to install chargers?
We've seen a lot of them farm out some of their labor to the Philippines and to more developing countries that take care of a lot of the knick-knack day-to-day operations that my guys here that I'm employing Americans to take care of. And so that's more of a volume play. You have players like I would say players in the space, National Car Charging Pros or Car Charging Pros. You have Q Merit, you have EnviroSpark, Smart Charge America. You have a lot of the OEMs are starting to make partnerships with smaller electrical contractors, maybe even large nationwide electrical contractors. I mean, we're small, but we're nationwide. What I mean by small is we have small overhead. We have a lot less overhead. We try to utilize technology at hand to be able to pass those savings on to our customers. So you don't have to be large to do what we do. We can do massive volume. I'm only like 20% capacity. I can 10x and not have to really hire anyone if I can inject more automation and maybe AI into our operations. But I would say the likes of Q Merit, EnviroSpark. I think it's EnviroSpark or EnviroSheet. No, it's EnviroSpark. Car Charging Pros. You have Faraday installers or Faraday something. There's these small little pockets of companies that just started popping up that are basically competing with us, but I don't see them as competitors. I mean, I enjoy seeing new companies rival and come out of the woods. Treehouse is another one that I would say is up there with us. But I enjoy seeing competition. I mean, I keep an eye on them. I don't care what they're doing. I'm grateful for them, but I'm so focused on what we can do internally to better our services for our customers. That's literally all I care about. Everyone sends, oh, you see what these guys are doing? That's great. I'm proud of them. It's very, very intuitive. That is awesome. Congratulations, guys. But I'm not going to sit there and rummish everything and turn the ship just because they're doing something. Like, no, we're going to continue to focus on what we can focus on. So I hope that, I would say Treehouse, Q-Merit, Enviro, Spark, Smart Charge America. I mean, you can see that we've been doing it for a long time, and for the longest time, we have analytics on the back of our website, and so we can see who's visiting our website and what they're doing. And we could see that, people with other companies are visiting our website. They're going through, they're submitting, they're going through a process. So they're learning how we're doing things. And then, they're just creating it themselves. So great. Awesome. Yes, please do that. It works. Please use what we have, so, but I don't go and investigate them and see how well they're doing it and what they changed. We're just completely focused on us. So, yeah.
Sure. That's cool. I know we only have a few minutes left.
I got all day basically. So yeah, if we go over a little bit, no problem. I'm here for you.
I just have two questions left.
Sure.
First, what kind of business models do you think will dominate the EV charging market moving forward here in the future? Do you think it's more pay-per-use, subscription models, bundled services? What kind of business models do you think will dominate EV charging?
Well, is your main focus like on residential charging or commercial? Because those are two very, very, different use case or industry sectors.
Dive into both. I'm curious what the difference is.
Okay, let's go residential. I think, one of the things we're currently looking for investors right now, and it's very difficult to find an investment firm that has the same unique qualities and unique sustainability initiatives that we hold dear and true to our mission. So, we're looking for investors right now. And we do have kind of a pitch deck that showcases, hey, look, we can come in. We have all the data. We've done 35,000 EV chargers, across the US. We have this immense pool of data, and we're having AI, kind of help us utilize this data. And we know that we can potentially come in and do a full-on EV charging setup for anyone, anywhere in the country for $30 a month. Like, we know we can do it. Like, that's it. And so much like your cable TV subscription or your satellite TV subscription, if you guys remember satellite days where you had to get the satellite, installed on your home, and you had, whatever, and you had to pay a deposit, and, you pay $79 a month for that service. Well, we can essentially do the same thing with EV charging when it comes to residential. And maybe the customer's not out of pocket $1,500 or $1,700, what's the average price of installing a charger, charging station in your home with the price of chargers. It's around $1,700 to $1,850 with the charger. I mean, chargers are not, the charger is almost the most expensive part of the whole process. So I would say residential, that would be one of the unique things that we could really start capturing a lot of market share if people just like, it's subscription based, $30 a month, all in. And if you move or you leave or whatever, you got to let us know and bring us, we'll come back and remove our charger, or we'll upgrade your charger. Or if anything ever happens to your charger, we're there to fix it. Like, because we're part of that contract, right? Just kind of like your cable. If your cable goes out or your internet goes out, you're gonna be calling the cable company like, dude, you need to come over here and fix this. This is an emergency. I am out. I am without internet. I am untethered to the world. You need to come over here ASAP. So we see the same along lines and parallel lines of residential. And then of course with commercial, I would say business model wise is we've seen a lot of energy use payment systems, which basically means that, as we are charging operator. So we are charging provider, we're charging operator, and we're charging installer. And so we kind of do all of it, but we're very selective in the sites that we actually put our charging stations in the ground, because we will go in, we'll do the installation, we'll put our own charging stations in the ground, and we'll charge customers for that. And as a result, we reimburse the owner of the company or the building the power for the electricity that he's helping us, he's allowing us to use to power the EVs. And so, if it's, let's say 40 cents a kilowatt, and let's say his cost on his power is 5 cents a kilowatt, then I'm profiting 35 cents per kilowatt.
Mm.
Well, there could be something where, hey, if we split the cost on the chargers and the install, I'll share half of my income profit that comes out of this, this utilization. I'll share half of it with you if you want to go halvesies with this. Like there's these flexible business models that people are using right now that are really, it's really fun just to kind of see how the industry is molding. And some companies like utilities or municipalities, they have all these properties all over the cities, and they own them all, and they want to put charging stations on all of them, but they don't want to lift a finger dealing with servicing, dealing with contracts, dealing with chargers, dealing with installation contracts, and all the electrical that comes with it. They want somebody else to come in and deal with it. Well, great. Then you have those charge point operators that'll come in, like Blink. What other companies I would say that do this model, and they do it really well? Let's just use Blink for example. I can't think of anything on top of my head, but they'll come in and they'll say, okay, we have 100 sites all over our city. We'll allow you to come in and install, excuse me, let's say four chargers at each site. Okay, well, 4 chargers at each site. I got 100 sites. It's going to be 400 chargers. A company like Blink can come in with their owner operated model, excuse me, and they can really blanket the coverage for that municipality. And so all that municipality is doing is really opening up host agreements for them to be able to use their property to be able to put the charging stations in. And maybe they have some agreement on the back end with electric power usage or whatever. But as a result of that OEM or charge point operator coming in, deploying their installation services, putting their hardware and purchasing their software and communication plans to keep those stations operational, so that way the consumer can have a place to go and charge, and the business, like the property, gets to say, hey, we have EV chargers over here. Well, as a result, that charge point operator is just going to take all of the profits, all of the revenue that comes out of there, right? They may reimburse the electricity to the site host because they're using their meter, but sometimes the charge point operator is just putting up their own meter at the property, and they're taking care of everything, right? And the problem is that it takes a really long time for your return on investment if you're having to deploy installation services, the charger, continuous ongoing software stuff. And depending on how often those chargers are being utilized, it could disrupt. There's just a level of uncertainty. It could ebb and flow your return on investment calculator as you're predicting, right? Everyone wants to predict, chargers are going to have a 75% utilization, and all that means is that 75% of the day it's constantly being used. Well, sometimes you might not get that. Sometimes you might get 5% utilization or 10, and so depending on your risk nature of as a charge point operator, you may develop flexible business models to say, hey, look, you guys perform and maybe put in all the electric infrastructure there, stub up with your wires. You take care of the capacity and the wires and the installation and all that. We'll come in with our chargers, tie them in, and there'll be our stuff, and then we'll give you 10% of the revenues that we get. So there's flexible business models. There's like the completely fully outsourced business model that we talked about with Blink, the flexible business model we just talked about just there. There's the managed business model where maybe the utility or the municipality, they're like, yeah, we'll buy chargers, we'll install them all, and we'll connect them all. We'll pay the ongoing fee, but we don't want to manage anything. We don't want to manage it. If they break, we don't care. We want them fixed. We're going to outsource the managing to somebody. And so what they'll do is they'll take a certain percentage of that revenue that they're receiving from those chargers. They'll hire a company like Smart Charge America that manages that whole portfolio, which we currently do for a lot of customers. And they may give us 40% of the revenue that they take in, right? And so as a result, we're not getting paid upfront a big giant contract fee every single year to manage and service. We're getting energy disbursements, so the more and more that charger, that charging station, gets utilized, the more energy dispersed payments systems that basically, it generates, the more and more we're getting, and the more the municipality or the charge point operator is making as a result. So I think, hopefully with the flexible business models that we currently have 5 flexible business models that we offer our customers: traditional, managed, finance, hybrid, and outsource. So traditional, it's just traditional. You're a business owner. You want to buy chargers. You call us, we'll supply you the charger. We'll get it connected with the software. If it's not already integrated, we'll do the installation. We'll get you turnkey full from start to start. You pay for the electricity. You monetize the whole thing. You give it away to your customers. We don't care what you do. We'll set it up for you. Signage, striping, ADA compliance, like all of the full kit and caboodle, right? That's your traditional model. Your managed model means that, hey, you're going to do the traditional, but you don't want to mess around with it. You don't want to mess around with servicing. You don't want to mess around with ongoing maintenance, all of that stuff. You want somebody to proactively monitor and manage this entire portfolio for you. So you're willing to give up a little bit of revenue. And so in that case, we'll do the traditional, and then we'll also provide maybe 5 years or 10-year contract for managing your chargers with however long you want. So it just depends on the rate. And then your finance means, hey, we actually work with OEMs and with financial institutions that will enable the business owner to say, I want chargers, but I'm kind of cash flow poor right now. I don't really have a lot of CapEx or maybe OpEx to throw at this. What kind of deal can you give me? Well, generally, let's say we're putting in 10 charging stations in the parking garage, and that's for the chargers and the install and all the infrastructure. Let's say it's $80,000. Well, we can finance that over 5 years, much like a car note. And sir, business, you can pay, $500 a month, or, I don't know, $5,000 a year over the next 6 years, or whatever the math, adds up to. And you can finance these over time. And then, of course, you have your hybrid, where we talked about, maybe the business owner, they pay for all the installation and, all the way up to the charging station point. And then we'll come in and we'll put our chargers in. And of course, we'll monetize the site, and then we'll split the revenue with the business owner, maybe 60-40, we get 60%, they get 40%. Okay, great. And then of course you have your fully outsourced, which is basically they're giving us permission to come on site, and we just own and operate the whole thing. We take care of the installation, the chargers, the servicing, the maintenance. We'll reimburse for all the electricity, but we capture all of the revenue. And so those 5 main business models allows us to flex with whatever the customer's needs are. It allows us to really increase our closing ratio. So no matter who comes to us, they always have a solution that may work best for their use case.
Yeah, that's really neat. That's cool. Every time you answer one of these questions, I'm left a little bit more impressed with Smart Charge America and the business you guys have done for the past 17 years.
It's a lot. I mean, you're not, you may be able to get some pretty good answers from others in the space. Maybe not as in depth, but maybe you'll get somewhere close. But that's all we're doing. We're just hoping to add as much value as we can to our customers and our partners, and such as yourself. So
yeah, that's awesome. One final question for you: what does success look like for Smart Charge America 10, 15 years from now? Where do you guys see yourselves headed?
We just want to serve as many customers as possible. That's it. Right now, we're servicing somewhere, I'd say somewhere between like 5,000 to 7,500 customers every year. We want to 10x that. We want to be serving somewhere around 75,000 to 100,000 customers every year. We know that if we're able to serve that many customers per year, that's the kind of impact that we want to make. That's the kind of dent that we want to make in the universe when it comes to all things EV charging. We just want to be able to really provide that kind of in layman's terms service for that transition. When you're transitioning from gasoline car to electric, that transition itself is mind-blowing. It's really hard to do. And you can ask people. That's why the transition to electric vehicles, it's taken kind of a very slow. Everyone's like, oh, it's gonna skyrocket. They were saying that 10 years ago. We're in 2025, and it's still like this. It's still growing. So that's really helped us grow methodically, grow smart, grow efficient. And then as a result, we're able to really pour back our teachings and our learnings back into our customer base to be able to, like I talked about before, when we opened up the show, talked about removing friction throughout the entire process. And so, yeah, I would say for us and our customer base, we just want to serve more customers. I've always looked at it like Elon being a battery baron. You have so many of these batteries that he's manufacturing. He's putting all these batteries in every car, and he's shipping out all these cars. I'm not so fascinated. I mean, I am fascinated with the cars, don't get me wrong, but the amount of battery cells that are in each one of these vehicles, it's amazing to see that much power in there. And so I see that as my customer base. You know, our customers are kind of like those battery cells. Like, we're nothing without our customers. But the more and more customers we have, the more and more power we're actually able to, like, you know, bring forth to, you know, others in the industry. The more we're able to really stay energized ourselves. It's a hard marketplace out there, and you have to be willing to pivot and to adapt. And you better do it fast, because the market is not friendly. They don't care. It moves very, very fast. So you have to move faster. You have to move with it. So that's all I would say on our end. We do plan on, you know, right now we're a $10 million company. Probably we're forecasted to be 20 million this year. But we think that if we're able to serve 100,000 customers every year, we'll probably be somewhere in the 100 million, maybe multiple 100 million, revenue range. But honestly, it doesn't mean anything unless everything just makes sense. Everything is vertically stacked. Everything is, kind of on one roof and operating just harmoniously all together as one single driving ship with one mission and focus. And that's just to accelerate the electrification of sustainable transportation. That's it. That's literally that's our mission statement. And so people come to us all the time and they want us to do other electrical work. And it's like, does it accelerate the electrification of sustainable transportation? No, it doesn't. So then we just don't do it. Go call this guy over here. He may be able to help you out. So that's what it is. It's just remaining focused, like maniacally focused on our mission statement, and then our just customer improvement, just collecting that customer feedback and just trying to remove the friction. So if we just continue to keep doing that 5-10 years, I think we will be at that 100,000, customer mark. And that's a lot of batteries to put in our battery pack. And that's all we want. We just want to be as big a battery pack as possible, go as far as possible. That's all. So
that's awesome. Well, Joseph, seriously appreciate your time and you just being willing to share your knowledge. You've got a lot. So thank you for your time. I do have a question. If we are to continue in this project and want to set up a future conversation later with you,
sure,
would you be open to us reaching back out to you? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure. Any topic, anything you guys kind of, if you're going a couple of layers deep and you kind of find, what, I think this is the area we need to get into and you want to know a little bit more. I was only able to really touch the surface of what we do, but if you want to find a particular topic and go even further down, I can go multiple layers down,
awesome.
With regards to what we've done and what we've seen in the industry, and hopefully we can bring some value towards what you guys are doing in the IP space. So that's
awesome. Well, thank you, Joseph, for your time. Really appreciate you. I'll keep you up to date on where we go from here.
You got it. Pig Suey, man. We'll see you soon, Philip. Thanks again, bud.
Thank you.